Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, then subscribe, like, and share your thoughts on what you think about this video. With that said, let's get into the video. The video I'm about to share is very interesting, and just from the title, you can tell what it's all about. Black wealth, white rage, or anger. In this video, a lady shares how being black in upper class has been a front row seat to a kind of white rage that affects everyone, no matter what social racial category you slot into in society. Now, she adds to say this rage actually has been around for a long time and runs under the same economic and political playbook that it has since the end of Civil War. Now, to back this up, she shares her own story. She also brings in a research by Miss Anderson's, which she feels people need to have a look at, because if people don't have a look at this playbook, they are going to miss it, especially at this age. Now, this is really an interesting topic. I'm not going to go into details as of yet, but for now, check out her video. I will be right back.
Being black and upper class has in no way been a persecution for me. It has, however, been a front row seat to a kind of white rage that affects everyone, no matter what social, racial category you slot into in society. This rage flies under the radar. It's made invisible. It's been around for a long time. It runs on the same economic, political playbook that it has since the end of the Civil War, and it's hurting all of you. All of you. Unless you're Jeff Bezos, but that's not you. A very small example of this is a couple of years back, I was all dressed up with black and white cousins. We're all dressed up. There's a good group of us, maybe 12, and we're going to the symphony. This symphony is it's manned by tons of volunteers, right? People who want to help you, people who are excited to see young people come to the symphony. And we get there, and I've got my 8 or 9 tickets all connected. And this older white woman, member of my community, is doing the scanning. I can tell from the get-go, she doesn't really want to help me. She's peeved. And I'm thinking, why? I've got this huge group of people coming in. Like, this is a win for the local community symphony. So she scans all my tickets, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. She gets to the 8th or 9th one. I don't remember how many exactly we had. It doesn't beep. Now, mind you, I had to pick up these tickets at will call with an ID, with my name. And she knows this because she's a volunteer before I come to her. She scans the last ticket that has the symphony's name on it. I mean, it's got all the official stuff. And she explodes with this quiet anger and this total frustration. Like, she's just like, she knew it. She knew I was a thief. And she loudly, in front of everybody, accuses me basically of stealing a ticket and attaching it to the legitimate tickets, which is how you should do crime. Now, that's a ridiculous thing. We sorted it out. We found out that yes, while she was following the rules as to what to do if, I guess, a thief comes and attaches a fake ticket to a bunch of real tickets, she did not know how to use her scanner properly. But instead of having customer service, instead of thinking about how one should approach this, she responded with the anger that was already inside of her. She'd already assumed and knew that this kind of place was not for people like us. And she didn't want to have to let us in. And if she could get us out on a technicality, on a quiet rule, and she threw up her hands, I can't help you, I can't do anything, she would. That is a very tiny, low stakes example of the work Carol Anderson, as a historian, has done in looking at the documented and demonstrated examples of rulemaking and code making that certain people in higher classes have used to quietly make sure that lower class whites and black people with wealth cannot get ahead. When Carol Anderson decided to write White Rage, it had come after she had been asked for the Washington Post to write an op-ed in the wake of August 2014 when the Black Lives Matter riots were exploding. Her critique was that we were looking at black rage. We were looking at physical anger, destruction of property, all those different things. And she was making it very clear in that first essay and then in her book that you can't understand this rage unless you understand the other kind of rage. That's the rage that uses your political power, your legal power, to write laws and little caveats into things to make sure that you undermine the wealth of people believed to be black, and you make sure that people who are believed to be white, who are in lower classes, never politically come together with those people. Now, who does that cost? It costs the democracy, and it costs all sorts of other classes that aren't in the ruling class. Because what they're doing is you're undermining, as she shows in her book, you're undermining voting rights. You're undermining this ability for the lower classes to look at each other and go, hey, our taxes should be going toward X, Y, and Z. Carol's research, I should say Miss Anderson's research, is an invitation to look at the kind of responses that have legally always existed to the advancement of Black people or the advancement of lower classes coming together and saying, this is how we would like to be treated. She's making it clear that if we don't look at the playbook, we're going to miss it in today's age. It's not something that happened back then. It's something that's happening now. We're going to be looking at this work because there's going to come a point in time when you are trying to rightfully access something that is yours, and you're going to be told that if it is given to you or if you want it, it's probably because you stole it or you shouldn't have it. As a historian, she's making these brilliant connections about how this is all a Black middle class, but then you can go out and see it's also the middle class as a whole. It's really important that we contextually understand our history because we're all bound up together, and all of our lives and our pursuit of happiness and liberty, it's connected. And there are reasons that people don't want you to understand that, because you become dangerous when you know that. You're less of a victim and you're more of a. So I'm excited to read this book. If you've read this book, if you finished it, if you know of any other things of Carol Anderson's that you just really particularly want to look at, please write in the comments.
Now, white rage is not about visible violence, but it rather works its way through the courts, the legislatures, and a range of government bureaucracies. There's so much unspoken truth of our racial divide. It's like every time Black people have made advances towards full participation in democracy or anything, palm color reaction has fueled up. Now, different people share experiences in these number of stitches. Check them out. I will be right back.
Our pursuit of happiness.
Y'all, please go back and watch that entire stitch, because that's probably been the most informative video on the things that I've been resonating in my head recently. And it has everything to do as me being raised in the suburbs as a Black man and the experiences that I've been dealing with as an adult, right? Both as a revert and understanding someone that has read scriptures and looked at the historical context of the gaslighting that has been done to Black Americans and just people in the world as a whole. Because as a Black person, you are not allowed to be intelligent, be fit, have self-confidence, know what you're talking about, anything positively reaffirming when it comes to yourself. You are not allowed to have that, because then you are entitled or you are a narcissist. This has everything to do with like how the wording system in America works, right? Then when it comes to just socialization in general, right, you are going to be running to people of all races, of all colors, that are going to try to critique you or check you on your authenticity because they don't believe that this is how Black people are supposed to be, but this is how we actually are. At least when you know and you practice any form of energy manipulation and you know your culture, that's just our culture.
Persecution for me. It has how.
So when we were picking our house, right, I was looking on Zillow or where I was looking on, and I saw a house, all brick home, beautiful house, for sale. It was a little high, and I didn't really like the interior of the house, but it led me down a rabbit hole, and I found out that the builder was still building in this neighborhood. So we went to go check the neighborhood out. Houses are beautiful. It's a suburban neighborhood. I'm from the city. I never lived in a suburb, and I grew up really poor, so this was definitely going to be like an upgrade for me and my husband. And our neighborhood is predominantly white, but it was so because every time we would drive through, people would be waving, saying hi, and I'm like, what's going on? It was weird for me because like and I'm from up north, so like, you know, that southern hospitality, I'm like, are they faking? Is it real? What I come to learn is, so my neighbors have actually, majority of them have been wonderful. Majority of them have been wonderful, but you know, there's always those one or two sprinkled in. And there was 2 times, like when we first moved in, where we could tell it was a problem from someone that we owned a home in this neighborhood. Now this neighborhood is one of the more expensive neighborhoods in the area we live in. And then we have one of the like a larger lot in the neighborhood. So, you know, and then one of the more expensive floor plans in the neighborhood. So I remember like the first time it was like this white man trying to sell, I don't know what he was trying to sell. I think like pest control or something. And I opened a door and he's like, can I speak to the owner of this house? And I said, I am the owner of this house. And he's like, oh, I wasn't expecting you to be so, and then he said young. And I'm like, and I just looked at him and I'm like, tell me how you really feel, because I doubt that's what you were going to say. I mean, you see, like I had a little gray hairs poking out, and I just was like, just go on your way. Like, I don't want your pest control, whatever. And then like the next time we ordered the DoorDash, and it was like this old man in his like older pickup truck. And my husband went out. He happened to be outside when he pulled up, and he went to get the food. And the man was like, how was you able to afford this house? And my husband, he was like, the same way you afforded your car. And that's what I love my husband, because sometimes he be so fast with the comebacks. Like, it's the man couldn't even say anything. He just drove off. And I'm like, it's just so crazy how like we feel like there's certain people that feel like we shouldn't have been able to attain the things that we have simply because we're like, it's weird. It's so weird, but it still exists. And thankfully, I mean, I don't mind those people, because I like to know which ones are the ones that think that way. Like, I need you to be overt with me. Like, I want to know who I need to avoid. I don't like the ones that pretend to be your friend but waiting to like knock you down. Like, yeah, that's my story for today.
Way been a persecution for me. It has, how.
Okay, so this is my experience in the medical field. Oftentimes we are mistaken for a PSW. So you walk into a patient's room and they say something like, you must be the PSW. And you have to actually explain and say, no, ma'am, I'm actually the registered nurse. I actually have a bachelor degree in science in nursing. But, you know, what I'm trying to say is it's never, you must be the surgeon, you must be the doctor. It's always, you must be the PSW. The same, another example, sometimes you might have a really busy day. So I am still in my scrubs, and so I'm trying to get my kids to go to their football practice or basketball practice. Once they see you, the first thing is, oh my God, this must be so hard on you being a single mom. How do you juggle that work-life balance? How do you do it? I never told you that I was single mom. You see the ring on my finger. I am very much married. My husband is very much involved. This is just my week. This is just to say again, I have nothing against single mom. I have nothing against PSW. I'm just sharing my experience about that negative nuance where you are always assumed that you are the PSW and not the surgeon, or you are the single mom and not the married one. It really irritates me. So I just want to share my experience.
Now, the unspoken truth of the subtitle of Carol Anderson's White Rage is that the dominant narrative of an interrupted albeit slow racial progress is false. Anderson's book looks at 5 major historical episodes of Black advancement and shows in painstaking and unimpeachable detail how an enormous array of policy assaults and legal contortions, as well as brute force, has punished Black resilience, Black resolve. Now, from Reconstruction to the election of the first Black president, Black progress has always been met with a white rage that seeks to undo, reverse, and roll back full citizenship for African Americans. Written in accessible language and organized by era text excerpts can be easily pulled from it for high school classrooms. Now, We're Not Yet Equal examines 5 moments when the end of the Civil War and Reconstruction was greeted with Jim Crow laws, the promise of new opportunities in the North during the Great Migration was limited when Black people were physically blocked from moving away from the South. The Supreme Court's landmark 1954 Brown v. Board of Education decision was met with the shutting down of public schools throughout the South. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 1964 and Voting Rights Act of 1965 led to laws that disenfranchised millions of African American voters, and a war on drugs that disproportionately target blacks. And the election of President Obama led to an outburst of violence, including the unaliving of black teen Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, as well as the election of Donald Trump. White rage won't just go away. According to Anderson, white rage is legitimatized through the policies that make up the American political framework. It lives in voter ID laws and manifests in the black votes that are never cast. It lives in criminal sentencing laws and plays out in a war on drugs that was waged against black people. It is the rage that fueled the insurrectionists who stormed the Capitol on January 6 in an attempt to dismantle America's multicultural democracy, and it hasn't gone away. White rage is the operational function of WS. It is the fear of a multicultural democracy. It is predicted on a sense that only whites are legitimate Americans. Now, when we talk about rage, we're talking about the policies that undermine African American achievement and advancement. These policies sanction the violence that accompanies white rage to make that environment look legitimate. White rage is about policy, and one of the big policies driving this thing is voter suppression. Since white rage is a response to African Americans' political advancement, the rise up in mass after the election of Barack Obama, for example, he put through millions of new voters with his ground game that were overwhelmingly African American, Hispanic, Asian American, the young and the poor. When you look at voter suppression policies, that's a hit list. And when you think about Trump's big lie that these elections were stolen, and you see where he identified these so-called stolen elections, he didn't point to Salt Lake City and many more other places. Of course, this topic is of public interest, and a lot of people did react or share comments or their thoughts on what they think about this topic. And I'm just going to read some of the comments that people shared. This one says, I saw a clip of Dr. Anderson speaking on white rage. It was so insightful and informative. She worded my feelings and experiences in a scholarly way. A perfect example of this is given in the new Netflix movie with Julia Roberts, Project 2025, though not Carol Anderson, but same ideology, just in politics. I'm not black, but I am brown. I just recently had a white woman scream at me at work because she thought the tech issue she was facing was my fault. Wow. Just wow, guys. Casually asking, so what do you do? Usually means how are you sharing space with me right now? This is legit. Why wealthy palm color Europeans stopped using spices. When it became more accessible to everyone else, spices were no longer desirable. Happened when I tried to book an Airbnb in that Hamptons. Reservation was cancelled as a party risk and my whole account banned, even with glowing review. My family are major donors at 2 universities. I was seated at a luncheon when I was asked what work I did and if I worked for someone or myself. I bought a car, was dressed casually and paid with my debit card. They said there was no way it would work. Told them to run the card. I've made money. My German professor literally said she thinks I'm an alien. Can't figure me out. I get good grades, dress well, and I write like a Victorian aristocrat. So many experiences from different people in the comment section. You can also share your experience as well with white rage, and let's just hear your story. Thank you for watching, and see you in my next video as I bring you another interesting video.